What's going on, Maschine Masters, and Happy New Year. My name is MGTheFuture. Thank you guys for joining me today. I have another exclusive tutorial. Today I'm going to be talking about how to make a Tee Grizzley type beat, but more importantly, this is me analyzing the Detroit wave of trap music that seems to be crossing over into the mainstream. Some of the biggest differences that I noticed is similar to the New York wave is that Detroit is speeding up trap. So that goes to my theory that all the music's going to start getting into that hip hop range, the 80s and 90s. So when you listen to some of this Tee Grizzley stuff, you're going to notice the Zaytoven patterns, but much faster. You're going to notice a lot of chord elements that is more typical of R&B and 90s music. So there's a lot of that. And then you might also hear that DJ Mustard influence as well, because as we get closer to 90, we're right there in DJ Mustard's zone where he's between 90 and 100. So all of that in the past few chart topping tracks in the urban side of things on radio kind of makes up this Detroit sound, I think. It differs from New York, where New York is speeding up trap as well, but they're using different textures for drums. So I kind of want to break that down and show you how to do your own today. And it's very simple to do. So in FL Studio, right now I have a straight generic trap kit that any of us can get, or we probably have already. Because this stuff is faster, I'm going to increase my project tempo to 160. 160 is just double of 80 beats per minute. The first thing we're going to start with though is our rhythm. So that's going to be the drums. Let's do the kick first. In most trap / Zaytoven type beats, it follows a very simple pattern, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So let's fill our claps in. In double time, our claps are always going to be this second gray box. Then our kick is going to be on that first one, so it sounds like this. So that's just a generic pattern, and what you want to do is fill it in on every red box after the first clap, right? So the first red, so that's the most common, I guess, structure for those type of beats. And almost all of them. Now there's a few things they change up or add, and I'm going to show you that as well. But the next part is, since their influence is more of Zaytoven style as well, they use a secondary snare or a rim shot. Now the rim shot normally falls in places where you would normally hear open hi-hat. For instance, like this simple open hi-hat pattern where you do hat down, open hi-hat up. Just think of the up rhythm. But instead of putting it there, put your rim shots there. Now that doesn't make any sense by itself, but what you want to do is, once you have that pattern going, is to start subtracting them. So we can hear where it's too much, right? We can get rid of some. If you don't have enough, you could put some back. And most of those beats have a different variance of that particular layout, but with different rim shots filled in. So it's very easy to do if you're using FL Studio step sequencer. So I like this particular pattern. And now what we're going to do is talk about the snare. The snare is usually the energy. It complements the clap. The clap is usually on breakdown, but the snare comes in especially on the hook or the rapping part, right? So we're going to layer that up with the claps and the rim shots in the middle. And then with that snare, of course, you could do snare rolls at the end of every 4 bars or at the end of every 8 bars. But they normally do that with the polo snare, the rolls and stuff. We're still using that in 2018, I think. But that's pretty much the basis. Now, because it's sped up, you can afford to do double kicks, which we're familiar with from East Coast hip hop. And a double kick in double time is every other block before one of these main down kicks, like this. Even this first one, it'll be here. So we'll fill those in first. And then you remove them. You remove the ones you don't want. And if you have a longer drum pattern, you know, like 4 bars or 8 bars, you could do different parts on each pattern, right? So it's a more interesting drum loop. But that's pretty much it. I want to put a whole lot of thought into it because that's the pattern they're still using for everything. And you know, you change the snare with a different snare, clap with a different clap. You can make 10 of these beats by the time you finish watching this video and be in the market with this style of music. The next part though is a little bit trickier. Is going to be the chords and the melody. From what I hear, because Detroit is more of a Motown thing, and a lot of people were musicians in that region through the 60s and 70s, you're going to hear a lot of chords. The best way to hack that though is to sample to some large extent. So for this demonstration, for time purposes, I'm going to sample. Think of your chord progressions and your melodies in the same thought of what were we sampling in the 90s? What type of music, what type of piano chords? Was it minor? Was it, you know, staccato? Like all those different variables you assign to the sample itself that they used back in the day, and then update that with new sounds and put this on top of these faster trap beats, and I think that'll work out for a lot of people, especially if you have Melodyne and things like that, or sample packs from the Maschine Masters shop especially. So I'm gonna show you one quick sample that I found that kind of reminded me of that. Real simple. In fact, I don't think I cut more of the sample out than that. I could change the key, of course. Unfortunately, this is in a major key, so I'll make it darker by switching it to a sharp. Cool, so I got it in C sharp, I got it darker, but it's off time a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is just time stretch it. So what I'm gonna have to do is record this into Edison. All right, so on channel 1, I'm gonna open up an Edison real quick. I wanna route Serato to channel 1 to go to that Edison. I'm gonna tell it to record on play, since it's in my pattern already. And I'm gonna extend it so it plays the whole sample out. And then we're gonna capture that in Edison, throw it into our playlist, and time stretch it so it fits in time with this beat. All right, got my sample. I'm gonna edit, I'm gonna go to trim. I'm gonna lo-fi it for good measure. You don't have to do this step, I just prefer to. Cool, so the spacing of that performance is what's throwing it off of the beat. So I'm gonna drag that into my playlist. I'm also gonna take pattern 1 and drag that into my playlist. Get rid of that Serato note since we're not using it to chop the sample or play that particular rhythm. And I see the problem here. It's in a 3/4, it looks like. So I'm gonna try to time stretch that evenly. So I'm gonna click on this waveform in our playlist. I'm gonna enable stretch, and then I'm gonna go to this magnet here and switch it to none, so there's no snap, and try to pull this back and see if I can get these transients lined up where you see like this little transient here that makes up that chord, to see if it falls on a downbeat and see if that helps us out. Cool, it cuts off the last part of that, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and switch it back to line. I'm gonna use our slicer tool and get it even. Then I can make that a little bit darker because it is kind of tinny. So I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. I'm gonna take this pitch, back it up. Cool, now it's getting really repetitive, which is okay in trap, but what that means is I wanna switch up my beat a little bit, so I'm gonna copy that pattern that we got and then make a variation of it. So I'm gonna right click on pattern 1, I'm gonna do clone, it becomes pattern 2, I'm gonna draw pattern 2 in, and I'm gonna follow the same formula I talked about earlier, where we could put these open hat/rim shots anywhere we want, so I'm gonna switch them around a little bit. I'll probably add a double kick here, move that snare, move that, probably move it closer, let's see what this sounds like. Cool. And now let's play that together in song mode. So it's less repetitive because we're giving more life to the drums by using different drum patterns. And like I said, you can clone that 3 or 4 more times and make a whole bunch of different variations and kind of plug away which group of patterns work best together. You can make this project even of the drums your template if you're making a whole bunch of Tee Grizzley type beats anyway. But that's a whole nother story. So what I need now is the key of this new sample, since we retuned it, we stretched it, probably not in C sharp anymore. So let's go ahead and save that. I'll go ahead and open it up in Melodyne. And the only thing I really want to know about it, not so much the chords, because I can use these chords. It looks like it's an E minor chord actually. It's an E minor or B, it's a B minor on top of an E minor chord.
Oh, that's fancy.
But it's in the root of B minor. So that's awesome. We switched it to a minor somehow. And now I'm going to switch my piano roll via helpers to that and use a sound to kind of complement that. Maybe even the 808 itself, right? So let me go ahead and go to helpers, scale highlighting. We're gonna do B, helpers again, and make sure we choose minor, natural, aioli. And I could do my 808 on this particular pattern, but I'll make a new one just for that. The 808s can get as crazy as you want or what you're used to in doing trap. I just don't recommend too much because it's so much faster. It doesn't feel the same way. Like the slower your tempo is, if you notice like on Meek Mill and Drake's Rico, you notice how slow that beat is? It's like 130 or 128 or so, and there's a lot more snare rolls and a lot more bass, and the melody on top is really slow. You can get away with that crazy drum pattern because the tempo is really slow. But when you start getting to 80 and 90 beats per minute, you're gonna notice there's less bass notes and less kicks. So definitely keep that in mind. On my 808, I want it to follow my kick, so I'm gonna draw it here first and then copy it to its own joint. So let's see what happens. And if you get rumbling in your bass because that's going so fast, make sure you cut itself on, which is on your channel for your waveform, hit that wrench, turn on cut itself, and that means every 808 stops the sustain of the previous one. And I might throw an extra one in there, a third up. So if the root note is B, I'm going up 1 white key, 3 white keys, so that becomes D. And I might actually duplicate that and switch it lower. So I'm gonna drop it an octave by holding Command and pressing down. Still the same value, still D, is just lower. Now I can take this, cut it out, go to my 808 track, paste it there. Now I only need one. So let's hear how this all sounds together. Now what you want to do, of course, is the hi-hats. The trap hi-hats are the same. They're still doing triplets, but maybe you don't want to do as many. So I'm going to do a very simple, steady hat pattern. Cool. Now the triplets, me personally, I noticed that a lot of these guys pitch their triplets, you know, they play it like a piano roll or they tune it, but that's usually on a different hi-hat. So I have a different hi-hat just for that. And what I do is very similar to this. I place one hi-hat where the triplet should go. So very similar to the open hi-hat in the rim shot theory. Instead of doing it every third box where it would be for open hat, do it on the downbeats, just like that. So I will have a triplet leading into my snare, and I'll have a triplet leading into my next snare as well. And I might have a triplet after that on a downbeat as well. Cool. And you create your rhythm for your triplets out of that. And then you go into it and then you draw the triplet accordingly. So you switch your snap to like a third step or so, zoom in on it, click on the existing note, and just triplet it. You could do more. If that's too fast, just skip every other one. And if you did want to change the pitch of them, right here at the bottom where your velocity is, you can kind of randomize this as well, or create different slopes and shapes. But you change control velocity to control fine pitch and do something very similar. And since my bass is going down there, I might put the pitch down for those hats there. And similar to the patterns, you can have multiple hi-hat arrangements and hi-hat patterns. For the sake of this beat, I'm gonna use one, right? Just for time purposes. And then we draw that in and then play it all together. And then of course, when you arrange it, those drops and everything I was telling you about, we'll move this over, double it up, and then maybe for the sake of this demonstration, I'll do 1, 1, and 2, 2. And then on my pattern 2, I'll take the snare out. Actually, I like that snare. Pattern 1, I'll take the snare out. Cool, so we're gonna extend that even further because that happened too soon. So it looks like 4 bars and 4 bars at this speed. Very simple, very easy to do. And then once you have an arrangement you like and everything's flowing how you want, then you can go back in and start adding additional elements like the bells, the counter melodies, whatever you want really. But what I really wanted to show you guys is just the outline of it. It's really simple. Once you have the foundation, the drums, and you understand the spacing of those kind of rhythms and beats, and you understand the tempo and how that affects your decisions in terms of programming those drums, you can pretty much throw anything you want on it, man. I mean, I'd go through some 112 samples and some Aaliyah or something and just throw it on top of it, because that part of their style doesn't change. And I think if you're kind of on the fence, like, well, that may feel easy or simple or whatever, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I think as producers, especially this year, let's stop trying to feel so important. What I mean is, let's try to be efficient. Let's figure out what the system is. Let's figure out what the styles are. Let's make it what it is and get to a space where we allow the artists to be great again, right? Because so much in the past has relied on producers being great, the beat doing too much, the beat being so crazy that people can just get on it and mumble. let's undo that a little bit. Let's stick to the basics. Let's put in the format. Let's put in the high quality sounds and high quality drums. You'll find that your productivity will increase when you stop trying to figure out a different way to do something that's been done 1,000 times by 1,000 different people already, right? Makes sense? Hopefully it does. But anyway, if you have comments or questions or concerns, definitely leave them in the box below. If you want to reach me on social media, you can do that on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at MGTheFuture. Also be sure to follow at Maschine Masters. Thank you guys for your time. Until next time, peace.